Financial leadership is changing. CFOs no longer record history, they make history. This podcast will help you become a better leader, strategic thinker, and digital visionary. Welcome to Secrets of Rockstar CFOs, the ultimate podcast for chief financial officers. Follow along as Jack McCullough engages in exciting chats with accomplished CFOs, learning how they overcame obstacles and positioned their companies for the future. Here's your host, Jack McCullough.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs. This is our first episode, and our first guest certainly is a rockstar CFO. I'm really excited to introduce Aradhana Sarin, Dr. Aradhana Sarin, who is the CFO and Executive Director at AstraZeneca. Aradhana, welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs.
Thank you so much, Jack. Really appreciate your having me here.
Oh, no, it's great to have you. And I'll be honest, when I was preparing for this, I was thinking, how do I introduce you to the audience? And I was thinking, one of the presentations that I give lately is on sort of the new prototype of the CFO, which was changing anyway, and it's changed more dramatically in the last few years. But a lot of the qualities of the new prototype CFO are things like they're analytical, they're innovative, they're collaborative, they are very thoughtful in their approach, they have an empathetic leadership style, and of course, they remain financial experts as well. And, I didn't define the prototype thinking of you, but, gosh, I may as well have, right? I mean, you check just about all of those boxes, I have to think. On the other hand, your background is pretty unconventional, having, started your career as a medical doctor in India, and now you're a Fortune CFO of, a true global powerhouse. And I'd love to start off a little about your journey, because I know our listeners are going to be curious. How do you go from medical doctor to the CFO of AstraZeneca?
Well, first of all, none of that was planned. So I grew up in Tanzania in East Africa in very modest background. And what my upbringing in Tanzania really taught me is the value of resources and how those are allocated, and a lot of the challenges that common people face, medical care, food supply, water supply, etc., and understanding economies and how they're different. For example, in Africa, a lot of the economies are agriculturally driven and so forth. Then I went to India. I trained as a medical professional, and I practiced as a doctor both in India and then came back to Tanzania and did that. What I learned about myself was that I really loved learning medicine and studying medicine. I didn't as much enjoy practicing medicine, or I enjoyed it, but it sort of became routine after some time. And so I wanted to do something else. And I also realized that in order to have a bigger impact, one really has to understand business. And I had no business background. So I decided to apply to business schools and finally went to Stanford and got my MBA. I ended up loving finance in my first semester, even though I had never actually studied finance or even had done math. I hadn't done math for 10 years because I was so focused on biology and medicine and so forth. But I ended up loving it. And I got a job on Wall Street as I left Stanford. I ended up staying on in investment banking for almost 2 decades after that. And every day I learned a lot. I saw various cycles, ups and downs in the industry, on Wall Street, and really got to analyze a lot of companies as I was taking them public or raising financing for them or doing strategic transactions for them. So it really gave me a good sense of what good business and what good business strategy looks like. And then I moved to the pharma sector, joined a company called Alexion Pharmaceuticals, which was a bit of a which was a bit of a turnaround and growth story. And then that company got acquired for almost 40 billion by AstraZeneca. And so I'm now at AstraZeneca as their CFO, and it's been a great journey. I definitely learned a lot about all sorts of roles, but never stop learning. So
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the great qualities of any leader, I suppose, is intellectual curiosity and learning till the day they die. But you started that off by mentioning that the journey wasn't planned, and then as you describe it, I suppose there's no way anyone could have planned that, right? Because when you were a doctor, I mean, you were a real doctor. You were treating AIDS patients and other things back in the day, is my understanding. Is that correct?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, very much in the ward, treating patients, seeing patients in the outpatient department. So very much a hands-on physician.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. And like when I mentioned earlier, it's sort of the prototype of the CFO. Like I advise a lot of up and coming leaders, people who are going to be the next generation of CFOs. They'll be CFOs in 6 to 3 years. And, while you sort of fit the prototype, I can't really advise them to go back to medical school as a viable path. You're a controller. Why don't you go to medical school and practice as a physician? So it's a terrific story. And, I'm sure it's very helpful, your background being a CFO at a biotech company, right? Because you actually understand the science, right? Not just the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's different for different people. So, whatever sector or area is of interest, I think it's generally a pretty good idea to learn the business, because while you may be a CFO or you may be a finance expert, your real value add can be when you understand the business aspect as much as you understand the finance aspect. And that's definitely been true for me. But I'm again in the healthcare sector. For people who are in technology or other sectors, again, understanding the business gives you a whole different perspective, which allows you to be a better thought partner, better strategic partner, better help allocate resources, better help drive strategy, for example.
Yeah, no, that makes all the sense in the world. And even like when you're talking to people on your R&D team, and I remember when you presented at the conference, you mentioned finance and accounting is your team, the whole company is your team. So that probably gives you a measure of credibility that you can ask thoughtful questions and thoughtful follow-up questions too, I suppose, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do view the entire company as my team. I don't necessarily view that only the finance department is my department, because every company is, I equate it to a living, breathing organism, right? And every cell and every organ in the body has a role, and it's all interdependent. And you can't say, well, we can't function without the HR department, or we can't function without the science department, or whatever. So it's the interdependencies and the ability to drive the entire organism is, and so the entire company and all individuals are really my team, which is why I think in the CFO role, it's really important to have an understanding of all the different parts of the business. Obviously, whatever is your fundamental area of business value, whether it's technology or semiconductors or energy or whatever sector you're in, you have to understand the sector really well as well.
Yeah, no, that makes it's such a useful thing, because at the start of my career, the CFO, often the best accountant would be promoted to the CFO role. And sure, they had to understand the business a little bit, but it was maybe the fifth most important thing that they would bring to the role, right? It's, accounting and finance and internal controls. But now it's strategic and innovative and all of those other things. It's a much more exciting and more important role, I have to think. So.
Yeah, it's definitely more exciting, and I think one can have more impact, but I also think it's not static. So it is dynamic, and I also think CFOs in 10 years from now will have or will require different skill sets to be successful and impactful. So, it's definitely evolved from 10 years ago, like you said, where, accounting and controls were important, which still are very important, but and very fundamental to the finance process and delivery, but it's become much more strategic. And I think in the future, it will also be people who are very technology savvy, who can integrate with systems and processes within finance, and really drive a lot of that across the enterprise, while also being strategic. So I think it's a constant evolution, and every sort of decade requires different skills that you need to continue to drive.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. That makes sense. So, well, one of the things I know that you're particularly passionate about, because it came up in our prior conversations in your own presentation, is the whole art and science of building a team. And you had a couple of quotes that I particularly loved. You talked about influence, not authority. And you mentioned also that fear works, but love works better. And also being realistic, that you just can't please all the people all of the time. But I'd love to, you built a great team, not only at AZ, but in prior aspects of your career. I'd love to get, your philosophy on how do you build a great team, how do you attract and recruit, retrain, and build and develop. What's worked for you? What's sort of your secret to your success?
I don't know if I can pinpoint one reason, but you're right. I think having a great team is everything. More and more, I think in my career, I've realized that your success is determined by the success of people around you. And if you can build a great team and motivate them to bring their best self at work every single day, you will get great outcomes. And so attracting the right people, and a lot of that involves sort of networking and making sure that you are aware of where great talent exists, if and when that opportunity arises, but also making sure that you look at people for what's ideal or what's needed for that specific company at that specific time. So somebody may be, very talented and great person for the role, but that may not be what the company requires at that time. And so, there's been times when I've had to make difficult decisions about, people, for example, but it was what was needed for the company at that time of transition, or whatever the company was requiring at the time. And then, the other part is, how do you motivate people to bring their best self to work every day and to give you that 110%? And that, I think, is driven by whether people believe you are truly invested as a leader and as manager in their success, and are you supporting them when you onboard them and making sure they're set up for that success. Are you available for helping solve problems, and do you accept them fully as individuals, not just as professionals, because we all have different personas. We have a work persona, we have a family persona, and a friend persona, but accepting the whole individual so they can bring their full self to work and then be able to contribute. So I think it's a lot of those factors. I am very passionate about development and learning, and I challenge my team to do the same with their teams, but so maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned in our prior conversation, you mentioned people join a company but stay with the company sometimes not for the same reasons, right? And I'm not going to say it's easy to recruit people at AstraZeneca, because it's not easy to recruit people anywhere these days, but great brand, very well respected company. It's easier than some other situations might be, but keeping them, you're going after the best and brightest, and they're constantly going to have a lot of opportunities at other companies. So, is it culturally, is that what keeps them more than anything? Interesting work, or combination of things?
Yeah, you're right. I think what attracts people oftentimes is the role and, obviously financial or compensation or, other factors. But I think what keeps people is, starting overall with the company and how they associate themselves with the purpose and the mission of the company. And I'm very lucky that way. I work in an industry where it is very purposeful work, developing cancer drugs or developing drugs for for other health conditions is very purposeful work that a lot of people can associate with. So first and foremost, it's sort of the purpose and whether they associate and are passionate about that purpose, even though they may not directly be touching a drug or being on the bench scientist or any of those roles. So that I think is first and foremost. The second is sort of the culture of the company, and does it encourage you to be entrepreneurial? Does it encourage you to take smart risks? Does it give you the freedom and the support to be your authentic self and to drive ideas and performance? So I often say the role of a manager is a little bit like I don't know if you've ever sort of done pottery, but when you do pottery, you sort of put like this lump of clay, and you're beating it from the outside, but you're sort of supporting it from the inside, and it's both, right? It's stretching and pushing people, but also supporting them in all ways possible to bring out the shape, bring out the best shape of that clay.
That's I've never done pottery. My wife actually picked it up. I don't know if you remember the movie Ghost, probably from the early 1990s.
Yeah.
I think that inspired a lot of people to pick it up right around then, but we didn't stay with it very long. And it wasn't anything that I tried it a couple of times. I was trying to make a coffee cup and it looked more like a banana. So I realized that wasn't really the best use of my talents, but it's a great analogy though. So, but cool. Interesting. Another thing that I was really impressed to find out about was in AstraZeneca and the commitment to sustainability, because everybody talks about it, but you've made really impressive investments in it. There's walk the walk and talk the talk.
Mm-hmm.
I said it backwards, but you've really done a lot. It sort of permeates almost every decision you make. Is probably not an exaggeration to say that, right?
No, absolutely. And we are, I would say, AstraZeneca as a company is definitely on the leading edge of what we can contribute to in sustainability in our industry, and I would say across most industries as well. And there's several reasons again for that. One is just the fundamental belief that we need to take care of our planet, right? We and our generations to come will benefit from a healthy planet. The second is the relationship that a healthy planet has with a healthy body, and we see that in places where respiratory disease is common, and we know that's very much related to air quality, for example, and and so forth. So again, there's the combination and the connection between a healthy society and a healthy people with a healthy planet. And you are right that we have permeated that in all the decisions, many decisions across the company that we make. So starting from every site that we have for manufacturing or office site, we've converted that to clean energy, and some of the sites we're even doing biogas and actually investing with local companies, biogas producers, etc., to fuel our factories with biogas. We have implemented that in packaging and reducing the footprint of packaging and shipping. One of the things which is very interesting in the healthcare industry is you may have seen, and every time you get a prescription, you get this package insert, and it's a big page that is a lot of fine print, and it's folded in, and nobody really reads that anymore.
I've never read one in my life.
Nobody reads it, yet it's always, it's mandated obviously by the FDA and regulators to include that, but it causes a lot of paper waste. It causes a lot of increase in shipping costs because that has to go into a bigger package and that needs to be shipped. But you could now do that with a QR code on the packaging. You don't need to sort of put that package insert. And so and again, legislation doesn't exist for that, but we are starting to help with legislation and push that as well with with society. We're working with various governments across the globe on, especially post the pandemic, on how do we increase and help increase the resiliency of healthcare systems, across the globe. We have reduced our travel budget and travel related carbon targets that are monitored and tracked across the company. We make inhalation products, so for asthma and so forth. You may have seen inhalers that people use. Now those inhalers use propellants that are not greenhouse gas friendly, and so we are changing and investing several hundred millions in a new propellant that will have will not have that impact. So it is a big investment, and we've also set up something called an initiative with a sustainability initiative with all our procurement partners. So with our scope 3 emissions, with people that supply product to us in, whether it's API or pipettes or, all sorts of disposables, to help them drive this as well, because it only works, obviously, if we're all working together.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for, for the company for taking the leadership role on this, because, it's the clock's ticking, right? We've been being warned about this for a little while, and it's great that companies like yours are, providing the example for the rest of us to follow. And, the costs that you mentioned, I mean, they're staggering, but it's the right thing to do. So that's terrific. So one thing I also know that's very important to you, and I believe you're the leader of AstraZeneca's Women Leaders Global Network. And
Yeah.
I know you're very big on empowering and developing female talent. I'd love to chat with you about that initiative, and, what your role is in it, and, what drives you. So.
Yeah, so it was as many companies do. We have sort of an employee resource network, and I'm fortunate enough to be the executive sponsor for what we call the Women's Network, or the Network of Women now. And many companies obviously have similar types of networks. And I think it's and it's not just for women, obviously. It's also for men who are advocates and sponsors and support support diversity. But what drives me to do and take some of this initiative is really helping women achieve their full potential. And we've obviously come a long way over the last several decades, but I think it's just driving greater awareness. It's promoting connectivity, and really just inspiring and mentoring women across across the organization. And it's we have so much to learn just as people and individual, and the more we can get inspired by stories of other people, and know that people face similar challenges and what they did, the more confident we can get, and the more we can overcome whatever obstacles we may be facing, and also just get new ideas, because the world is evolving very fast. And a lot of times in your day job, you're sort of in your silo, and you're performing your day job, but you don't really know all the opportunities that may exist outside, or tangentially, or some other area that you may find fascinating. So it's a learning and a development opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, and it's a commitment, because like when you spoke at our conference, and our community is about 40% female, and like a lot of them, they were just thrilled by your leadership and your success story. So whether it was part of the overall plan or not, you've really become a great role model for female leaders. So that's fantastic. So I wanted to chat with you. You're on at least 2 boards that I know of, and I think the word iconic is probably thrown around a little too often, but in both of these cases, they're iconic companies. You're on the board of governors of the American Red Cross, And I believe you relatively recently joined the board of AB InBev. Maybe you've been on a little bit longer, but I'd love to chat with you about that. What those roles were like. How do they influence you as a CFO? The things you've learned in your board role, do you bring back to your role at AstraZeneca?
Yeah, absolutely. I am on the board of AstraZeneca as an executive director, but I have joined both the American Red Cross and AB InBev. The American Red Cross, as you know, is one of the most impactful organization. And when I was approached by them, it's really one of these things where you've seen the Red Cross from childhood, right? You've seen
Sure.
It's the mission of the Red Cross and the values that it represents in all of us. The service, the humility, the generosity of people, and it's one of the largest, obviously, charitable organizations. It is 100% sort of depends on volunteers and donors to provide its mission. And the mission is multifold. It's providing and supplying life-saving blood and blood products, and it manages the majority of the blood supply in the U.S. And then it's the humanitarian support, whether it's in hurricanes or other crises, water crises, etc. And what I found great about the American Red Cross is, even though it's a charitable organization, it is a very, very well-run organization. And when I say well-run, from a financial standpoint, right? So the controls and all that, and to make sure that the more than 90% of the money that is donated actually goes to the end cause. And and that's very important, because sometimes non-for-profits become are not very well run, and it doesn't actually fulfill the mission and the purpose that it was set up for. So that's the Red Cross, and I get to meet wonderful people and see the impact that they're having. Everything from communities, but also our armed forces. I mean, it's an organization that truly supports our armed forces and their families in the U.S. So the impact is very, very widespread, and it's a privilege to be associated with them. And then on InBev, I joined that board. So it's a completely different industry. And I joined that board because, for me, it was an opportunity to both learn and contribute. Because it's a completely different industry, I get to learn a lot, and I get to learn about a completely different industry, but also see what is great about other industries that I can then bring back to AstraZeneca to improve things that we can do. Very great in marketing, very great in digital networks. So InBev, for example, has set up this marketplace. It's called Bees, and it has essentially, if you can imagine, the business that InBev is in beer business, it's a very local business, right? So the farmers are local, the breweries are local, the shipping is local, the selling is local, and there are thousands of retailers, and it actually has, and these digital tools have empowered these local retailers to be more financially independent. So again, the impact an organization and an institution like that can have on local communities is incredible.
Yeah, forgive me. It's interesting to hear you're focusing locality of it, because, like, as an outsider, I think of it as like a global superpower. I mean, American. So Anheuser-Busch is certainly, top 10 net recognizable names. But you're more impressed by sort of the local impact it's having, it sounds like.
It's both, actually. It's very interesting. It is a global superpower, and are very global brands. And this is the other thing I'm learning. I mean, brands are something that it's like children, and you have to grow them and nurture them and nourish them and maintain them. And so yes, it's very global, but the impact also is very local and in a country, in a community. I'm also very impressed by their mission and their sort of focus on sustainability. And again, if you think of the impact it has locally, the impact it can have on farmers and on water supply and all of those things, it is very local. And like I said, I get to learn a lot, but I also get to hopefully contribute, given a lot of the challenges that, like you said, global companies face are very similar, and dealing with those challenges and making choices. You can take some of the learnings and apply those. So it's sort of both ways for me on that board.
Yeah, because it's interesting, because if you were to go out of your way to try, you probably couldn't come up with 3 organizations more different, right?
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, yet you can draw lessons from each and apply them back to the other. And are you on the audit committees for either of those entities?
I am, yes.
Okay,
I am on the audit committee.
So
by default, I as a finance professional, you end up being on the audit committee.
Yeah, I've always, like, audit committees are a great segue for CFOs to get on boards, but then people realize, hey, they can bring so much more than just the financial and accounting. So even if it's the entry point, it's not a limiting thing. But I'm always curious, do you have like sort of a split personality, right? You're on the audit committee, so you're sort of overseeing and developing a relationship with the CFO. Does that impact how you approach your own job as the CFO over at AstraZeneca?
Yeah, so I think it's actually, you bring up a very good point. And I think that's another thing that I've learned, being on the board, one has to realize the difference between board and management, and know that there is a difference. And the management's role is to run the company, is to make decisions, to drive the business. And the board's role is there from a governance standpoint, brainstorming and strategic decisions and things like that. And I think it's because I am in a CFO role, it actually helps me being on the audit committee and knowing what is sort of the management's, what's in their purview and what's where I can or can have a view or should have a view or have influence, and where I should not. So I think it actually helped with defining boundaries and respecting those boundaries while still being able to influence and provide good governance.
Cool. Interesting. So I want to chat with you because I think you're a little ahead of the curve amongst CFOs. But you have a very big presence on social media, LinkedIn in particular, perhaps others, but LinkedIn's what I know. But you're very prolific, and it's, I've been following, you posted recently and in conversation with, and it was the CEO of Wellington and whatnot. But is that something, are you just passionate about social media? Was it sort of a planned strategy? Because a lot of CFOs are, reticent to go on social media and talk about things like that, but you've clearly embraced it.
Actually, it's not planned strategy for social media. So what the video that you watched, I think what you're referring to, was a conversation with Jean Hines, who's the CEO of Wellington. And Jean is somebody who has been in my network. I've known her for many, many years when she was a portfolio manager at Wellington, and obviously has grown now to be CEO. But that was actually a snippet of a fireside chat, a 45-minute, an hour fireside chat that I hosted for the Women's Network that we just talked about. So,
okay.
So my intention, as sponsor and for this Women's Network, one of the things which I can do and contribute is bringing outside in perspective into a company. And so I started this idea and series that I will host, different women that I'm inspired by personally as well, for the network of women, and then take a snippet of that, and that was sort of what was posted on social media, and hopefully there'll be more of those to come. But I always feel that there's so many inspiring people and inspiring women, that I'm always so excited about talking to them, but hopefully others in the women's network can also benefit from that.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll, when on the webpage, I'll share your LinkedIn profile. Although I'll admit a little jealousy, because I think I have a lot of followers, but I think you actually have more than I do. So, but the other thing, I'm going to go on a limb with this, Aradhana. Your profile picture, it was taken at somebody's birthday party. I can tell because you've got the little, I can see like the APPY or something like that. I'm going to guess you're the only Fortune 100 CFO whose LinkedIn profile picture was taken at a birthday party. So was it your own birthday or somebody else's?
No, it was actually my nephew's birthday. It was his 1-year birthday party. That picture, I think, is actually in Singapore. So my nephew's first birthday, and that's the picture from that. But also, one of my favorite songs is the song Happy, which also plays actually in Despicable Me, the cartoon movie. So I just left it there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's a great picture. It's just very genuine, right? I mean, almost all of us have these really, still photos. And, in my case, it was airbrushed enough. Some of my relatives tease me, was this your high school picture that you're using on LinkedIn? It's like, whatever. But, you try to put your best foot forward, but it's great. And so I'm going to conclude, and I'm hoping I'm not going to get anyone in trouble here, but one of your colleagues shared with me, you're very passionate about comics.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I asked, does she have any interesting hobbies and whatnot? So, and I think Calvin and Hobbes, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what, you're such an intellectual person. It surprised me a little bit. I'd love to know what sort of is driving that passion.
I won't say it's passion, but I love comics. I've loved comics since I was growing up. I grew up reading, I don't know if it was very popular in America or not, but like Tintin. I don't know if you've ever read like The Adventures of Tintin or Asterix. Actually, both, the author was Belgian, but that inspired me to be, very adventurous, because those stories were all about adventure. Love reading or comic books. Calvin and Hobbes is also one of my favorite, because it has a great mix of humor and sarcasm, as well as introspection. But I also love sort of animation movies. I always feel like animation movies sort of have great messages, and can bring out emotion and messages, sometimes more powerfully than other movies. So I have a lot of favorite animation movies that I love, and I can watch them many times. So there's a sort of childlike quality to them, but still has very deep meaning. So,
Yeah.
And that's sort of why I like comics as well.
Well, yeah, because you referenced Despicable Me earlier, and I had to sort of go through the catalog to remember what that was. When we first mentioned it, I was thinking he was talking about, Marvel Comics or something like that. And like, boy, that would be shocking to know that you're a fan of like Marvel Comics. Although I will say my wife is a big fan of Thor.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the comic, but I think the movie version. Apparently, he's quite a handsome fella. But cool. Well, anyway, this was fantastic. I want to thank you for making the time. I know, with everything you've got going on, you're super busy. So, thank you for this. Really grateful. And unfortunately, I set the bar a little bit high. This is the first episode. So it's kind of like, where do I go from here, right? But wonderful conversation. So grateful you could carve out some time to make this happen for us.
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Jack.
Thank you for listening to this episode. To continue your exploration of this role that focuses on strategy, leadership, finance, and technology, listen to more episodes of the show at rockstarcfos.com. Join this revolution, episode by episode. Push yourself to achieve great things and unlock the best opportunities available to you. CFOs are creating a legacy, and it's time for you to leave your own unique imprint on the world today. That's all for now. See you on the next one.